First Church of the Holy Jackass.
The First Church of the Holy Jackass is not an actual religious institution that is legally recognized or subsidized with any taxpayer money. It is instead a one-person Setian religious art project and social initiative that is coordinated entirely by me, G.B. Marion, a priest of Set in the LV 426 tradition of Setianism. And I am here to offer a very different concept of religion than most people in the United States of America are familiar with. Duat Set, so mote it be. The evidence available to us shows the Egyptian version of the spirit world or other side was much more favorable to the common person than many others. The Egyptians called it Duat, which means place where the sun is born, according to Maria Betro's Hieroglyphics, the Writings of Ancient Egypt, by Abbeville Press from 1996. Why do you suppose they would refer to the land of the dead by such an optimistic-sounding name? Because it is where Ra, the Heliopolitan sun god and creator of the universe, crosses paths with Osiris each night to be reborn. Ra, quote-unquote, dies whenever they cross beneath the horizon, thereby passing into the realm of the invisible. While there, Ra must be regenerated by Osiris, who was the first of the gods to die and rise again. Once this nocturnal meeting in Duat occurs, Ra begins their regenesis, a process that culminates at the break of dawn. So from the ancient Egyptian perspective, the spirit world isn't a place of death or decay, but of new energy and life. Duat is not just a destination for the past, but also a source of the yet-to-be. There is some confusion as to where Duat is located exactly. We used to think the Egyptians perceived it as being literally underground, but more recent discoveries show that the physical world and Duat were viewed as being two sides of the same coin. The universe is like a giant body, the body of Atum-Ra, and the world of matter, including everything in outer space, is just the visible outer skin of that body, while Duat is the invisible flesh and bone beneath that skin. The hieroglyphic for Duat resembles a five-pointed asterisk in a circle. The asterisk is the hieroglyphic for star, and the circle represents rebirth. The star is also hidden within the circle so as to represent invisibility. Doesn't this image also make you think of something else in particular? I think it looks like a possible origin for the pentagram myself. The ancient Egyptians believed the human self consists of several multidimensional components, some of which exist in Duat. The most obvious component of the self, of course, is the physical body. Images are magical windows to alternate universes, and there is no greater image for the self than one's very own material form. In the West, we tend to dissociate ourselves from our bodies, but this ontological dualism does not exist so much in ancient Egyptian beliefs. We aren't souls born into bodies. We are bodies from whence souls sprout. The preservation of the body was deemed absolutely critical to having a pleasant afterlife, hence the mortuary tradition of mummification. For those whose corpses are lost or destroyed, new images can be created to serve as magical surrogates, such as statues or paintings. The gods themselves are said to have once had physical bodies with flesh made of gold and bones made of silver. When the gods still walked this earth, time was linear, with events unfolding between them from beginning to middle to end. When they ascended into Duat, nature switched to following cyclical time. What were once linear events for the gods are now cyclical events that we experience here on earth as the seasons, the human sleep cycle, the experiences of birth and death, etc. Other components of the self include a person's soul and spirit. The soul is the innermost personality of a sentient being, while the spirit is like a secondary, invisible body a person may use to interact with forces in Duat. Your spirit is a twin version of yourself that occupies the exact same points in time and space that you do, but in a slightly different dimension, you might say. Spirituality, religion, and magic are all ways of using your spirit to create change, as opposed to implementing more conventional, physical methods. For example, the logic behind a healing spell, as I see it at least, is that you are basically sending regenerative vibes to the recipient's spirit from your own, which will hopefully heighten the recipient's chances for a speedy recovery. Even a thoughtful get well card can be an incredibly magical act in this regard, for it is literally a matter of trying to lift the other person's spirit. This applies to when we have spiritual experiences with gods or ghosts, too. When we bear witness to Set in ways most people would call supernatural, we are really seeing him with the eyes of our spirits rather than our bodies. By the same token, we are not actually seeing the physical body of Set, we are seeing one of his many spirit bodies instead. Another core component of the self in ancient Egyptian thought is the heart, by which the Egyptians meant the literal bodily organ, as opposed to a purely figurative concept of heart, as in Captain Planet or something. Advanced as they were, the Egyptians didn't realize the brain is the body part that enables us to think. They identified the heart as serving this function instead. The heart was considered to be the seat of a person's consciousness, as well as the part of their body where their soul and their spirit are attached. When a person's heart stops, the body, soul, and spirit are all separated. The spirit remains with its corpse, while the soul is guided by Anubis, Wetwawet, or another psychopomp to the Hall of Judgment in Duat. There the soul undergoes the weighing of the heart, which means the person is judged for all of their deeds and misdeeds in life, a thing for which only sentient beings with hearts, or in our culture, brains, can be held responsible. If the person's heart is too heavy with Isfet, which means falsehood, toxicity, and injustice, they are deemed unfit for the afterlife and are fed to the demon Amut or cast into a lake of fire. Back on Earth, the spirit withers away and dies, or it becomes restless and terrorizes the living as an evil ghost. But if a person's heart is more or less in good standing with Ma'at, which represents truth, balance, order, and interconnectedness, their soul and their spirit are reunited and transformed into a blessed dead, or imperishable one. An imperishable one is also united with their shadow. In this context, the term is literal, referring to those black shapes our bodies cast on walls or the ground whenever we stand in the light. Our shadows are not just apparitions, but living parts of ourselves. We create them without even thinking about it, and a part of us exists in them and is reflected in them. In the exact same way, a person can exist in other things they intentionally create as well, like songs, paintings, photographs, works of literature. This is exactly why the Egyptians built so many monuments and wrote down so much of their knowledge and history. To preserve their culture in so meticulous a manner has not only been a benefit for modern archaeologists in piecing together the Egyptian worldview, it has also helped the ancient Egyptians live on and continue influencing people today. This applies to when we look at photos or read letters from our departed loved ones as well. Art and literature do in fact help us live on after death, and it is our shadows that probably benefit from such creative work specifically. Names are also significant dimensions of the self. This includes not only our birth names, but any titles, nicknames, and other names we might be given or choose for ourselves as well. Each of the gods has various names by which they are known, and the same is true of ourselves. Names are living extensions of ourselves that carry a real lasting power of their own. For though they are long dead, we still speak the names of Hatshepsut, Joan of Arc, Princess Diana, and other blessed ancestors in regular conversation today. Doing so helps to keep this aspect of the self alive after death. There is also a story in which the goddess Isis tricks Atum-Ra into giving her their true secret name, which only Ra had known up to that point. By learning the true unknown name of Ra, Isis becomes the most powerful goddess, magician, and woman of all time. Conversely, the Egyptians defaced or erased the names of people and things they wanted to write out of history and existence. This is what happened to the heretic king, Akhenaten, who was born Amenhotep IV, and who prioritized his new religion of Atenism over his duty to be a good and responsible leader. His name was removed from various monuments after his death in an attempt to forget that this particular ruler even existed. This is also why modern Egyptian pagans generally write the name of the Isfet serpent in strikeout text. Simply writing the name is not good enough because it can actually attract the monster's attention to ourselves. Writing its name in strikeout text serves as a way for us to communicate about the rotten bastard without actually evoking it into our lives. If and when a person becomes a blessed dead or imperishable one, they are unified with themselves across both this world as a corpse and a spirit, and the other side as a soul, as well as with their various names and any objects in which their shadows might reside, such as photos or diaries. The blessed dead are said to reside with the Neteru and Duat, but there are actually many different heavens included there. Duat is not just one place, but a continuum filled with myriad worlds. Osiris has the field of reeds, an agrarian paradise filled with eternal booze and lovemaking. Ra has the solar bark, which resembles a phosphorescent cruise ship. Hathor has a sycamore tree, where she offers refreshments to the deceased. And Set, of course, has his desert between the worlds, located behind Kepesh, the Big Dipper. Imperishable ones are free to visit either of these various realms, but they are also free to visit the living and travel to alternate realities as well. This mobility of the dead between the worlds is remarkable when compared to most other religious teachings about life after death.
As the wheel of the year turns, as the days grow short and the shadows grow long, Sutek and Taweret open the mouths of all the hallowed dead, and the ways between the worlds are widened. And it is for this reason that we gather to remember our dearly departed loved ones, that we disguise ourselves and carve glowing faces to ward off evil spirits, and that we share offerings of sweets and make merry in the night. We reject the trivialization of this time by those who are without, for we know the season of the witch was, is, and always shall be holy across all of time and space. May we each enjoy a bountiful harvest and the company of good spirits this November Eve. In Sutek's name we pray. Dua Sutek, so mote it be.